a pageant queen turned author and child advocate. Christina Meredith was Miss California 2013. Thank you for being here, number one.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
It's an amazing journey you've had, and that ended up winning a beauty pageant, becoming
Yes.
Miss California, fulfilling the dreams that little girls would only imagine. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about your early life and where you came from. But I wanted to start out with this story. So I did this drama, this play called Woman Thou Art Loosed. And it was named after my book, and the book ended up becoming a huge seller. But anyway, I was in the Georgia Dome, and I showed on screen this story of a girl who was raised by a mother who was overbearing, mother self-consumed, and through her mother's negligence, she was exposed to men she shouldn't have met, and the girl was violated at an early age.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And it's about 80 or 90,000 women in the Georgia Dome. And when the girl was violated, her mother didn't believe her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when I played it in the room, that's when I went to the University of Life. Because out of those 80-some thousand women, they started screaming in the room, and I could hear them all over the room. And I knew that I had struck a nerve much bigger than I had ever anticipated.
Deep.
It is deep.
Deep.
I think it's something like 1 in 4 girls are molested between the age of 5 and 15 in the U.S.
Yep. Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that's 1, 2, 3, you, 1, 2, 3, you, 1, 2, 3, you, 1, 2, 3, you.
That's right. Yep.
Talk to me about your mother, because when I think of motherhood, I think of cupcakes and picnics outside.
Heart-shaped sandwiches.
Yeah, heart-shaped sandwiches.
I do too. I can't wait to be a mom.
Yeah, you think about all that. But that was not what you got.
Oh, no, it was not.
Why?
I think because, well, what I've been told is because out of all my siblings, they all had dark hair, dark skin like my Italian father.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's me, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was fair skin and fair eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And she grew up abused. And so my years of trauma therapy, I was told that she chose me because I resembled her, and she was projecting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Projecting her self-hatred or her own trauma from her childhood onto me. But I don't know why she never took to me. She didn't take to me as a baby, as a toddler.
I was getting ready to ask you, at what age did you notice,
Oh, I was young.
I'm not going to be the Gerber baby in this house?
6 or 7.
Okay.
You know, I talk about it in my book, the moment when I realized that I went from the object of, like, the elephant in the room, everyone knew I was treated different, to the right out in the open disdain.
Verbal abuse, the terms like laundry lady, slut, stupid, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Never calling you by your name.
Oh, Bishop, they were worse than that. That's a little sugar-coated.
PG rated.
That's right.
Yeah, it got really, really bad. When your mother, this is what I learned as a parent. I learned as a parent that I have to be careful what I say to my children, because my words mattered more than other
Planting
people's
seeds
words.
every time. Every time you speak to a young person, especially your children, you are planting seeds, either death or life.
It's a big, big deal. And you can't, in a moment of anger or frustration, say things over a temporary moment, because it stays with them forever. And I learned that as a parent and begin to understand my role as a father. And I think that would be true as a mother too. How did it affect how you see yourself?
Well, for a long time, I was tested at special needs level. I didn't know how to read. I was hooked on phonics. The teachers would take my desk and put it outside the classroom, doing different curriculums, because I was not at the ability to learn. I mean, those words of hatred and abuse and psychological torment, they crippled me.
Yeah.
They crippled me as a child and as a young person. It
Yeah.
took everything in me to overcome that when I finally got put into foster care, you know, and I remember being 10 years old after I just gotten beaten to a pulp, could not get up. And I said to myself, self, you will be nothing like her. You will be loving and kind, and you will be the antithesis of her. And I never let go of that. I mean, I think with the name calling, it was especially hard because she would force my siblings to call me those names too. She would force them to stand around me and chant demon, demon, demon over and over again.
Wow.
I mean, those things don't leave. I still remember that like it's yesterday. But the Lord makes all things new. And so here I am before you, and I've walked through fire. But do I look burned?
Right.
No.
Well, I was getting ready to say, you know, the normal thing from somebody like that who has that kind of childhood, who has that kind of verbal, physical, or perhaps even sexual abuse, they end up in a bad place.
Oh, I am an anomaly. I'll be the first one to tell you, and it's by the grace of the Lord. There is no other reason for me to be where I am or how I've turned out other than his kindness, his graciousness towards me. I have a tenacity and a grit that refuses to be anything less than what he's called me to be.
Wow.
And I don't know where I got that from other than him instilling that in me as a young person. The Lord came to me at 9 years old in a filthy, disgusting outdoor porch. The screens were all peeled up from the rain. There's filthy couches mildewed. It was disgusting. The Lord came to me there, right after just being raped and beaten. And I was doing laundry because I was 9 years old. And I was doing laundry because I was in charge of all the chores. And I'm so tiny that I'm like hanging over the laundry, pulling the wet clothes out, right? And I just remember being so broken.
9 years old.
So broken.
That's a baby.
You know, it's so funny. I see 9-year-olds. I was at my pastor's house last night filming another interview, and their daughter's 9. And I looked at her and I was like, Lord, how did you get me through that? How did I not break, shatter? Because he took my heart out of my body and he encased it in glass, in his kindness, and he gave it back to me years later.
Absolutely amazing. When you said a moment ago, I'm not going to be anything like her. I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be kind. It really resonated with me because my book, Crushing, is all about taking what was working against you and making it work for you.
Yes.
Rather than using it as a crutch to enable you to be debilitated by it.
Oh, I could have easily numbed myself. I mean, I understand why people have addiction. It's easier to numb than to feel. To walk through the pain and to walk through the trauma therapy and to walk through the torment, it's hard. It takes effort, takes time, takes dedication, takes discipline. These things aren't fun.
No.
It's easier to numb, but I didn't have that option because I knew that if I did those things, who was going to save me?
Right.
I didn't have anyone coming there was no one going to pick me up out of the ditch or out of the jail cell no. I did not have the luxury of being like most young people who have parents who can go to the parties and, you know, who can smoke the pot or drink. I didn't have that. I had to work 2 jobs and I knew it.
Right.
And so I think God in his graciousness just gave me that knowing that I couldn't mess up because I had 1 shot. That's it. And so after aging out of foster care and living in my car, I read my Bible every day. And it's so funny because when I was living in my car, I was listening to you.
Wow.
And listening to Joyce Meyer.
Are you
and listening
serious?
to Adrian. Oh, yes, sir. And so it is in his kindness I could cry over this. In the Lord's kindness, here I am 12 years later. After writing down a list of dreams. One, to write a book, to start a nonprofit, to be a speaker, to be a leader of nations, to change the world, to eliminate foster care, to reform it in its entirety, to end sexual violence and the absolute pandemic of sexual abuse and enslavement that's happening in our country and around the world. All of these things. And the Lord brought me to this place where I'm in front of a man who I used to listen to over and over and over again.
That's amazing.
To encourage me, to remind me that He heard me.
You had dreams. A 9-year-old girl, I can almost see you, raped and abused, ostracized, ultimately thrown into foster care, at one time homeless. It sounds like you lost everything except your dreams.
Everything except my faith.
Yeah. That the tenacity, though, faith would have been, get me out of this mess. Okay,
this is not what your word says.
Yeah. Faith would have been, get me out of that. If anything out of this mess would have been good. But you had that audacious faith that went to being a leader, a speaker, specific things that you wanted to be, and yet you had been crushed. How did you not allow the crushing to kill your dreams?
Well, there was many nights of torment where I could not sleep, where I was crushed in spirit, crushed mentally, emotionally, physically. You know, I think when I was homeless and a few years in my younger 20s when I started really going to trauma therapy and really working out that trauma, it was brutal. It hurt. I didn't have an escape from feeling the feelings of what happened to me as a little girl. I had to relive it all over again and again and again and again until I could be at peace with it. You know, I mean, I still have scars on my bodies from abuse, and I look at them and I'm like, oh, and then I think of Jesus and I'm better. Right. You know, and I'm okay. Right. But I think what carried me through when I wrote down all of my dreams living in my car, well, at first I hated them because the Lord gave them to me and I was so confused by them. I was like, why are you giving me these dreams? Because this is obviously not the circumstance. So I rebelled against them.
Let's hold it right there a minute. Because I do think dreams can be tormenting when they don't match up with your reality.
Yes, they can.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I
do. And a lot of people watching us right now are tired of being encouraged, and they're tired of hearing everything's going to be all right, and they're tired of believing that God's going to make a way because they keep seeing their realities, and so they don't want to dream again. They don't want to believe again because the dream seems so ridiculous.
So impossible, insurmountable, ludicrous. Why is a girl like me, homeless, sweating to death in 102 degrees in Florida, not even able to sleep in my car, but it's sleeping on the beach, showering at beach excess, can't wash my clothes, shame up the wazoo. And here I am waking up in the middle of the night with me on stage with 10,000 people in front of me in a beautiful dress. What, Lord? What? Can you please make this stop? It was a torment for so long. And then eventually, after months and months of these dreams that would wake me up, I said, fine. Okay. And I started writing them down. And then eventually the dreams took hold of my heart and they got in. And then I started to believe, okay, Lord, you're taking me there. I'm going to hold you to it. And here we are 12 years later, and I'm not a quitter. I'm a lot of things, but I will not quit.
Obviously.
And so
you went from thinking it to writing it to believing it to experiencing it. It started with the thought.
That's right.
And then you finally gave way to the thought that was a tormenting thought.
Put it in my heart. It led it from here to here.
To your heart. And when it got in your heart, explain to my viewer what it means, because I think a lot of people think it's in their heart, but it's really just in their head. How do you know when your dream is in your heart?
When you believe it and you tell someone and you don't care if they believe it or not, because you are convinced. You are convinced and compelled like the sky is blue, that whatever your dream is done. It's already happened. It is done. It is.
Are you because you seem strong, you seem confident, you seem courageous, you look me straight in the eye, you talk to me with a confidence, and we're just meeting for the very first time, that not everybody would have. Do you think that having faced your demons and survived your traumas, that I always say pain always brings a gift?
Of course it does.
And do you think that the gift that pain gave you was courage and tenacity, having survived all of that?
The last chapter in my book is called Suffering. And it's all about how suffering chisels out of you a tenacity and a character and an integrity and a courageousness that can otherwise not be there without the suffering. Suffering chisels out of you something that could not otherwise be there, and that something is a purpose and a tool to get you to be successful in whatever purpose that God has given you.
I'll tell you something that I think. Those of us that suffer, and in whatever way we suffer, and then we parent, I think one of the mistakes we make innocently is that we give our children everything except what made us great. We try to give them all the stuff that we didn't get. We try to make everything really easy for them, and then they grow up and they're these little spoiled brats, and you're looking at them and you're just wanting to do them like that, you know? And I think sometimes you can make things so easy for them that they don't have the tenacity that was developed. I'm not at all suggesting that we should take them down the path you went down.
Oh, no.
No, I don't mean that.
Of course not.
But I do mean that sometimes our need to find absolution and cleansing and bestowing charitable love on our children can go to such extremes that we don't give them any challenges, anything to fight for, anything to discover themselves through.
What chisels out of you? You've suffered. You know what it's like. The dark night of the soul is real.
Yeah.
And if you haven't experienced that, then you don't have that deep knowing in yourself, right?
Yeah.
Suffering is a gift. It is a tool that you can utilize. It doesn't have to be a crippling end-all be-all. It doesn't have to be the death of you. It can be the life of you. You just have to change your perspective.
When you read about, and we don't know what's true, it's still an allegation, but when you read about people like R. Kelly and this kind of abuse and these women trapped in his house allegedly and what's permeating our headlines right now, I know what you would say to the women because you have survived abuse and trauma. I'm curious what you would say to him.
I would say to him, do you know that you're robbing the souls of these girls blind? Does it even affect you? If he's a sociopath, it won't matter to him. Yeah, if a person doesn't have empathy, then it won't matter to him if he's physically robbing someone of their soul, because there's nothing like sexual abuse. Out of all the abuses, sexual violence and sexual abuse does something to the soul on a soul level, right? It is violent in all ways. It robs you and cripples you of everything. It's like a stain that you cannot wash off unless you spend years and years of working on your trauma and healing it, right? Because all things can be made new again. And so I think I would say to abusers who aren't sociopaths, who have empathy, do you realize that you're robbing these children of their souls,
of
their joy?
I so agree, and this is my thought about it. A lot of abusers were abused themselves.
True, that's very true.
And I think that if you don't get better, you get bitter. And if you get bitter, you get hard and you start acting out your own trauma on other people's lives. I think the cautionary tale is if you're out there and you're suffering, before you act out the suffering on somebody else, get yourself some help.
Exactly. That's why I'm such an advocate for mental health therapies. You have to have trauma therapy if you've been abused as a child. That's how we get children out of the cycle of poverty and abuse, out of the prison system, out of the juvenile detention center, out of the welfare system. It's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. How do we end that? Therapies. So they can heal from the deep-seated wounds that cause them to think they only have this one track. 60% of foster care girls end up pregnant. 70% of boys end up in prison. That doesn't have to be that way.
Doesn't.
If we do mandatory trauma therapy so they can heal from their wounds mentally,
right,
then they can come back into society as whole, healthy adults and have healthy relationships.
When you start talking about learning disabilities and struggling in school, and and some kids were dyslexic and all of these sorts of things, some of which you went through, and many, many more go through things that are even more traumatic. And the way we handle things now, we drug them up with Ritalin and we give them a bunch of prescription medication, and we never even find out that sometimes the child isn't doing well academically because of some secret or some shame that they're carrying down on the inside. School counselors are being underfunded and undervalued. But there is a deep need for professionals to kind of look over the shoulder of parents and help us parent problematic children, or help the child escape problematic parents. The reason I think that's important, my book tackles crushing and being crushed on all levels. Sometimes it's as graphically and poignantly as you have, sometimes crushed by divorce, crushed by rejection, crushed by losing a job. It doesn't always have to be as severe as what you're talking about, but hurt is hurt.
Yes.
And getting yourself well so that you can go forward with your life is really, really important. I think that not only can you get well, I think that you can use what hurts you as power.
Yes, 100%. It's fuel.
How much has that affected you in shaping out who you are today? Do you think that you would be who you are today if you had not gone through what you went through yesterday?
Absolutely not. I am who I am because of what I've suffered. My credibility is my suffering. I wear it like a badge of honor. I walked through it, the Lord allowed it, and here I am. I wouldn't change anything, because I can't tell you how many stories I get, and you get stories too. And they share their hearts with you, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or letters. And I hear these young adults and these young people in foster care have been abused or have been raped, and they're sharing their hearts with me, and they're telling me how encouraging it is that my story empowers them, and I weep. Who am I? Who am I that I can offer hope and joy to the world? What a gift. How humbling. It is a great responsibility. And I carry that with all of the might in me. I carry that.
Paul says to comfort with the same comfort wherewith you have been comforted.
That's right.
And I think that the real secret weapon of a great minister is seeing a little bit of yourself in everybody you minister to.
That's right.
And that the driving force that makes you go the extra mile to reach them is that you are kin to them. Kinsman redeemer. Redeeming somebody because you are kin to them. And sometimes people who think that they're ministers just because of their degrees are ineffective today because they're not kin to the people that they're talking to.
I mean, you could have a piece of paper that says you're an electrician. You might not be a good one, though. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I totally agree with you. I think our duty as Christians, and even if you're not a Christian, if you've suffered and you've endured something, it is your obligation to go to that other person who suffered what you suffered and pull them out of the pit.
Absolutely.
That's your job. You've survived it, now go help someone else. That's your duty.
Absolutely.
And that's what I endeavor to do on all fronts until the Lord calls me home when I'm old and gray with grandbabies.
With grandbabies.
That's right.
If there's somebody watching us right now, and there he is, who's in an abusive relationship, or whether it is parental or marital or employment, and they are suffering in ways that we can't even articulate. What would you say to them as first steps toward getting yourself together?
Reach out to a trusted friend. This small circle of trust is a real thing. You have to have it. You have to have that in your life. You are not an island. Reach out to someone who loves you, who you can trust, and share with them your pain. Getting it out is the first step. Admitting it and putting it out there starts the healing. That's the beginning of your healing journey. When I was 12 years old and I told my two best friends in middle school I had been raped and beaten and all those things, that was the day I started my healing journey. So I would say to anyone who's experiencing hardship, suffering on any relationship, you know, whether it's intimate or professional, on any level, tell someone, right? Allow yourself to cry on a shoulder. That's what we're here for each other. Get it out.
I want you to understand, Christina and I are not here talking today because we are superheroes or have been endowed with some great power, or we've been christened by some angelic being that enables us to do something that you cannot do. We're just ordinary people, flawed people, tired, frustrated, going through changes people just like anybody else. We are here to say to you that you're worth saving.
Yes, and amen.
That you're valuable. And Christina stands as a testimony to every woman out there that even though your situation is ugly, you could end up in a very beautiful place and being acknowledged as a very beautiful person, and that it's not your fault.
That's
you're
right.
being treated that way. Because isn't that how we often feel, that maybe I deserve this, maybe I did something to bring this on myself?
I thought that for years. Sometimes
Yeah.
I still revert back to that. Did I deserve that? Did I? Because if you hear the lie over and over again, you start to begin the lie.
You're right.
You have to remember that you're worthy, and that I have to go off of what Jesus says about me, not what anyone else.
Yeah, not even what I say about me.
That's right.
Yeah, you
Not
can't even trust your own voice
No,
sometimes.
I'm a hot mess. My mind will beat me up quicker than anyone else in this room.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I have to purposefully commit to saying, what does the word say? Right?
Yeah.
And I have to do that often.
You know what I love about what you just said? Sometimes when people survive something and they have been crushed and they come out on the other side, they seem to act as if that it is completely over and there's no residue. There's always residue, isn't it?
Oh, I'm a hot mess, okay? Don't let this fool you.
Yeah. I get it.
Every day I'm in prayer. I mean, trauma is real. And now I'm a whole person and I love, and there's no bitterness, no unforgiveness. I don't wish any ill or harm on anyone who's ever wounded me. My whole life is giving back to those who are being wounded now. But do I get flashbacks sometimes that cripple me? My inner circle will tell you yes. Sometimes do I weep over my mother who I haven't seen in 17 years?
Wow.
Yeah, of course I do. I'm a human being. Does that make me unable to perform my duties or be professional or hold a job? No, I'm a human. Of course I'm gonna have bad days, just like everybody else on the planet.
Right.
I am no different.
Right.
But the difference is that I don't allow those bad days to cripple me.
Right.
I allow myself to feel the hurt, the anxiety, the moment, and then the next day I wake up and there's mercies new. It's a new day, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have to get to that place where you can allow yourself to be human, because we are, and it's hard. Life is hard.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It is not easy to be a human being, especially in our culture, in our society, with all of the pressures. And I can tell you as a woman, me having to look a certain way at all times, and I can't, God forbid I wear sweatpants and a ponytail. Woo! You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
But I think it's just embracing being human and then not wallowing.
I'm loving this conversation. Okay, I knew I would. I'm loving this conversation. one of the reasons I'm loving this conversation is because what we're doing is painting what deliverance looks like.
Yes.
That you're still going to have moments, and that you're still going to have tears, and that you're going to still have some insecurities that you have to wrestle with. But that doesn't mean that you're not well and that you're not okay.
That's right.
And one of the things that I thought about Joseph when he says to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God made it good." Most of the time I hear people preach that, it's like he's telling them off.
No.
But I don't think that's how he said it.
Oh, he's saying it in love.
Yeah, I
kindness.
think so too. Yeah. I'm okay. I made it. You meant it for evil, but I'm okay.
It's
God
all
made
good.
it good.
Yeah. That is the. Oh, I could cry because I am a Joseph, and I dream of the day that my siblings and I, all 10 of us, are around a table. And we are just eating and laughing, and I can just hug their necks and say, I love you, right? That's what Joseph did.
It's absolutely amazing. Reconciliation is absolutely amazing.
It's a gift.
It is an absolute gift. To the mother who did to her child what your mother did to you. You haven't seen your mother in...
Since the day I was taken away, Thanksgiving, 2002.
2002. That's a long time.
A hot minute.
There are so many women who, for whatever reason in their own lives, blew it as mothers. Mother's Day is not always a happy day for every woman.
Can I tell you it's hard for me, and I'm not even a mom?
Oh yeah, I can imagine. It reminds you of what you didn't get. If you could talk to your mother right now, let's pretend she's watching us right now. And let's pretend that she has lived all those years with the guilt and shame of what she did to you. What would you say to her?
Jesus loves you, and I forgive you. That's what I would say.
Wow. Whether your mother is watching or not, somebody's mother just heard you. And somebody's mother's got tears running down her face.
The Lord makes all things new.
Yeah.
He makes all things new.
To extend mercy to somebody who has been merciless is the opiate of grace itself.
That's Jesus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for the courage to show people who have been crushed that there is a before and after.
Oh, yes.
That there, and even more specifically, one of the unique gifts that talking to you gave our viewers was that you can be free and still be flawed.
Oh,
yeah.
120%.
See, because a lot of them don't think that they're better because they have these moments, or they watch a movie and it makes them start crying, or somebody says something and they flash back at them real quick, and then they think, oops, excuse me, I lost it. That doesn't mean you're not okay.
No.
It just means you're human.
Bishop, I am a whole person. I am healed. Because I have moments of sadness and moments of anxiety does not make me not healed and whole. That makes me human.
Right.
Right? For anyone out there listening, if you've never had sadness, if you've never had anxiety, if you've never experienced hardship, if you've never experienced anger, if you've never experienced these things, would you please find me and tell me who you are? Because I would love to meet you.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I would love to meet the person who has never had human emotion.
Right.
Right?
Right. That's a part of the human experience.
It's healthy.
When we, see, what you give us is important because people today talk a lot about mentoring, and mentoring is real important. It's really significant. It's a great thing.
That's my only reason I've been successful.
Yeah, is mentoring. Mentoring is a great thing, and I both give and receive it, and I value it. But if there were anything greater, is modeling.
Oh, yes.
To model it.
I agree.
What does that look like? What does a good mother look like? What does wholeness look like? What does deliberate look like? Because sometimes Christian people make it look like something that is so different from my reality that I myself think, oh, I'm not there yet. I need to go back and start over again. And what you did is you brought it out of the sky and brought it within my reach and said, the fact that you might have a nightmare here or there, or the fact that you might wake up crying every now and then, or the fact that you might be overly stressed on Tuesday doesn't mean that you're not fine on Wednesday and Thursday, and that's what it looks like.
That's right. That's being human, baby.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
It's true.
That's a great thing.
It's true.
The other thing that you gave us was how important it was that when I was preaching and writing and doing what I do, or Joyce was doing what she does.
I love that woman.
We couldn't see you, but we reach you. And it really validates how important it is that we have CDs, DVDs, tapes, MP3s, whatever you can put it on, that the message gets out, because you never know who's going to be living in a car listening at that. And
sweating their tail off
sweating their
in the
tail
middle
off
of the
in
night.
Florida.
Woo, it was hotter than sin.
And then end up sitting across from you, telling you, you spoke to me. You didn't know me, but you spoke to me.
Yes, you did.
And now I'm doing what you do.
No, I wouldn't say I'm doing what you're doing.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
One day I'll be on your level. I'm getting there.
No, you know something? If you reach one person.
Oh gosh, then it's worth it.
It does absolutely everything. So it's more than just writing a book. It's more than getting a great job. It's more than being Miss California. All of those are tools that God gives you as platforms, so that you can be heard and reach people.
That's right.
You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We are better because of you, and we are richer because of you.
I'm so humbled.
And I can't fathom the crushing you endured to sit in that seat. You paid a price much more than what anybody paid for their last semester in the doctoral program. Though if you do that, that's a wonderful thing to do, and it's a great asset to have. But you paid a personal price to add validity to theology.
Yes.
By the things you suffered. And thank you sounds so stupid. And I would never wish it on anybody. But I just want to acknowledge the cost of being you, and the cost of the oil in your alabaster box, and to tell somebody out there right now that through the crushing, God is making oil out of your life.
Yes. Yes,
and you're
amen.
going to be something amazing in a minute. When that crushing is over and that refining process is complete, you're going to come forth as pure gold. And then I'm going to interview you. Thank you, Christina,
Oh,
for
yes,
being
sir.
here.
Thank you so much.
You've been amazing.
It's a pleasure.